I read a second time. I call the member for Newtown.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens on the Criminal Legislation Amendment Child Sexual Abuse Bill 2018 and offer the Greens support for this bill. We support this bill and the commitment from the New South Wales Government to implementing the recommendations of the Royal Commission earlier this year. However, I would like to flag that the Greens will be moving an amendment in the other place, acknowledging and recognising a significant shortcoming in this bill. My Greens colleague David Shoebridge will be moving this amendment to seek to remedy the oversight or the absence, if you like, the shortcoming of the omission of the Royal Commission recommendation to remove the seal of the confessional for child sexual abuse. The Royal Commission found that the confessional was an obstacle for justice. It unambiguously recommended that the seal be removed, and unfortunately this bill does not see it, and my Greens colleague David Shoebridge in the other place will be moving an amendment to that effect. This bill does make a number of amendments to the criminal law following the recommendations of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. The recommendations within this bill are most of the basic criminal justice reforms, and we note that there are a number of outstanding recommendations about police response and charging policy, investigations, evidence policy and procedure, judicial directions and other areas which we will continue to monitor the progress and implementation of these reforms. The current bill before the Parliament will create a new offence of concealing child abuse offences. And it is modelled on the existing Section 316. Adults who knew or reasonably should have known child abuse offences have been committed will have to provide that information to the police or face prosecution. This is good, but as with the existing Section 316, it still requires the Attorney-General to consent to a prosecution if it is against a member of a profession identified in the regulations. The current regulations includes, amongst other things, lawyers and members of the clergy. While lawyers must be able to uphold or be able to hold information given to them by their clients confidentially, the same cannot be said of priests. And under this new proposed law, there will continue to be special treatment for members of the clergy and special protections for the confessional. It makes the prosecution of a police for failing to disclose child abuse evidence a political matter, and that should no longer be the law. The Royal Commission, as I have said, unambiguously recommended that this not be the case, and it is something that the Royal Commission's recommendation that the Greens are committed to seeing changed, and we do urge those that are considering this legislation in the other place, that are having the conversations in their party rooms and amongst their colleagues, to consider supporting that recommendation. The Catholic Church has long argued that the confession should be above the law, and to date has had the support of the Parliament of New South Wales for this position. The Greens and the Royal Commission both disagree with this. The idea that we put the confessional above the law is just something that cannot be in any way logically argued when we have seen and heard the stories and the harm that has been done to so many young people as a result of many years of abuse, many years of absolutely hideous and unarticulatable cause of harm that has occurred to so many people. It is clear that the Royal Commission unambiguously recommended the removal of the confessional as a barrier to reporting. This is why the Greens are going to be moving this amendment. Ireland first made changes in 2015 with the Children First Act, which introduced mandatory reporting for clergy. Other jurisdictions in Australia have committed to implementing the Royal Commission recommendation, with South Australia and the ACT already committed to legislating it. This is a test of the good faith of the government. And we are calling on all sides of government and all sides of the Parliament in the upper house to consider supporting this amendment. I cannot, for one, imagine the pain that is caused to those that are impacted, the survivors of such abuse. I cannot imagine the impact on the families and the communities and their loved ones of this kind of abuse. I want to thank all of the brave survivors and people that have spoken out with such courage, such resilience, and such a commitment towards standing up against injustice. Can I say that the Greens will continue to stand with you in your long road to see an absolute implementation of all of the recommendations, and I for one, believe that anything that we can do to prevent any protection of anything that would in any way enable harm against children is something that we should oppose, and therefore I urge everyone in the other House to support the Greens amendment.